You've probably heard of Abdullah if you're familiar with the law of assumption. Who, exactly, is he? For what reason did he gain so much notoriety in the realm of manifestation? What exactly did he lecture on, and how useful were his lectures? All this and more will be revealed in today's video, so pay attention even if you're already familiar with him. You might be missing something crucial on your path to manifestation if you are. Therefore, Abdullah was a mystic guru from Ethiopia, and he taught Neville Goddard this spiritual law. Your current educator learned from him. It's possible that, as you listen to this account, you'll get the impression that Abdullah was rude to Neville before his first conscious manifestation. The reality, however, is quite different. In the desire of manifesting your desires into the world, many of you are missing a single essential step. We must return to the narrative. This represents Neville Goddard's first conscious attempt at utilizing the law of assumption on purpose. It all began in 1933, at the height of the Great Depression in the United States, when millions of people were out of work and sleeping in parks and tunnels for the chance to wake up to a hot shower and a warm loaf of bread. There were lines out the door. In those eras, when Neville Goddard was younger, he was a dancer, and times were hard for everyone. There was zero interest in a dance-off. It didn't work out for Neville Goddard. Without a job, he was unable to earn any money. Also, he was a basement dweller. One day in late October, Neville confides in his friend Abdullah that he left Barbados 12 years ago and has no plans to return. Abdullah lives in a lovely house across the street. However, he now has a strong desire, even a burning desire, to go back to Barbados, but he is unable to do so due to financial constraints. Recognize how Abdullah's response was out of the ordinary, given that Neville Goddard's financial constraints stemmed from a lack of money. Abdullah said to Neville, "Of course you see Barbados, and you see America from Barbados. You can smell the tropical land of Barbados. You see the little homes in Barbados. You simply sleep tonight after listening to it." Neville was confused and asked what he was doing in Barbados. Just like you did when you first heard about the law. Neville thought, "Is he insane? The two of us are in the same row, and I'm directly in front of him." Although he drank heavily, he never passed judgment. He then thought back to the night in his imagination. He dreamt he was back with his family in Barbados as he drifted off to sleep. Nothing at all happened in the real reality as a result of his making up this story while he was 2,000 kilometers away from the United States. Following a week of inactivity, he visited Abdullah and resumed reiterating his restriction. He insists there was no incident. Instead of enjoying the state of feeling a wish fulfilled, being in Barbados actually brought on a sense of disappointment. As Neville vented his frustrations to Abdullah, the latter turned his back on him, walked into his bedroom, and slammed the door in his face. You would feel insulted and outraged if something like this happened to you. Neville tried to explain the situation, but the door was slammed in his face. He didn't want to bother Neville Goddard because he was living in a state of wish fulfillment, which is understandable if you think about it. To elaborate, please give me a moment. Neville hid out in the house his family owned in Barbados. Now that he's already in Barbados, it's unclear why he'd bother talking about going there. If his assumption is correct, then how can he talk about being there already? Now that December has arrived, he has no money to fund a trip to Barbados. It is already the 4th of December, and the last ship expected to arrive in Barbados before the new year is not expected to arrive until the 6th. When he got home, he found an envelope on his doorstep from his brother, Victor. He wrote to Neville, inviting him to spend the holidays with him in Barbados. There has been a long separation between the Goddard siblings, but now they are all together again in Barbados. Neville is the only one who hasn't returned to the house. Since Victor already knows that Neville is jobless, he has no plausible alibi to use. In addition to the ticket to Barbados, Victor also sent him $50 to use toward clothing and let him know that he had already spoken with the shipping company and that they would be happy to hand it over to him. Following this, Neville was astounded and shocked. He hurried over to the shipping company and handed over the letter. They said they'd get him a first-class ticket, but there are none left. As a member of the first class, Neville has to sleep in the third-class cabin until the ship docks in St. Thomas, where a first-class bed will open up for him. After agreeing, Neville visited his friend Abdullah, who was overjoyed to report that he had secured the tickets and would be flying third class thanks to Neville's generosity. But Abdullah pressed him, inquiring as to the source of such a statement. Imagine the rigors of his first-class flight to Barbados after someone told you that you'd be flying economy. Many of us will be like Abdullah and live until the very end now that we have the winning ticket. That's the direction we're going in now. However, since this is not the end, anything is still possible. That's why you have to keep believing in the assumption until you can prove it wrong. On December 6, Neville boarded the vessel only to learn that a passenger had just moments before canceled their reservation. He's upgraded to first class, just like Neville Goddard did with his Barbie ships. Maybe you thought Abdullah was being rude, but he wasn't. He simply prompted him to maintain his happy, fulfilled state. When you have a desire for something, just feel it. Wish fulfillment is the emotional experience of having all of your desires granted. How often have you told yourself today that nothing has happened or that you don't have what you want? In the last week of October, Neville started planning the imaginary act that would reveal itself in the middle of December when he made his first conscious use of the law. To assume that it will take the same amount of time for you or that it will occur anytime soon is not the case. In that case, all you have to do is act out your fantasy in your state, and you'll be in a position where your wishes are being fulfilled. You can stop guessing how and when it will occur because it already has. Your flight has landed in Barbados. Most of you have probably heard of the concept of mental diet, in which it is suggested that in order to manifest your desires, you must adhere to a strict regimen of positive thinking. I just figured this out by trial and error. At first, maintaining a mental diet appeared difficult. You might think it's tough to keep to a mental diet, but trust me, it yields incredible results in surprisingly little time. Following a mental diet may seem impossible at first. I felt that way myself. But as I practiced meditation, I realized how my thoughts were fueling my body. Like you, I used to think that all of my thoughts had to be optimistic and congruent with my goal in order to bring about the desired outcome. I used to struggle with my mind because I convinced myself that I have countless thoughts every day and that it's next to impossible to make them all positive. A thought finally occurred to me one day. It helped me see where I was going wrong with my mental diet and gave me guidance for improvement. I want you to picture me standing in an infinite field with tiny particles moving here and there as I explain to you what I learned from reading Neville Goddard's books. That a persistent assumption hardens into fact, and that when I observed the nature of my mind, I learned that some thoughts were coming and going. Furthermore, you will be given the big picture of how to manifest with a mental die. Imagine yourself in a limitless arena. Furthermore, this region is home to a vast number of microscopic particles, some the size of a pea, all of which are in constant motion. What exactly are these sub-millimeter particles? This granular material represents your thoughts as they arrive at your location. One group of people thinks I'm great, while another group says I can't win. Several pea-sized particles orbit you throughout the day. You can choose to stop and hold these particles. As you hold them, they grow in size because other particles may suddenly join this pea-sized particle, making it much bigger than it was before. Let's assume you are holding the belief that you are unworthy of the things you desire and that you simply cannot have them. For obvious reasons, no one likes me. And I joined that tiny particle, and it grew a little bit, but you still didn't let go. Instead, you tightened your grip, making me look even worse. As more particles joined in, you gradually built up a huge form all around you. You're now acutely aware of it, and it appears enormous to you. Your insecurities are fighting back against the reality you've come to accept by acting in this way. It holds all of your worries, your restrictions, and the burdens you have carried. It now seems larger than you are. But there's no need to fret. You fashioned that statue and that wall,